Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you for joining me today. We're talking about Enneagram Type 5 and can 5s be leaders? And it's a good question. Of course they can. 5s are going to be innovative leaders. They're going to have their challenges like any other type, but 5s can definitely be leaders. So let's talk about 5s a little bit and the kind of leadership style that they might bring into an organization, and the challenges that they will face. If you're a 5, thank you for joining me for this video, and I hope that you'll find this information helpful. If you work with a 5, or you live with a 5, or married to a 5, I hope that this video will help you better understand the person that you're with, their strengths, weaknesses, challenges, what's going on the inside, and hope to unpack a little bit of that for you today in this discussion. So we're going to go down a list in just a minute of kind of what the 5, the way their brain works, the way they behave, and the kind of the things they would bring into a leadership position. But before we do, let's just review a little bit about what 5s are like and what's going on in a 5. 5, of course, is a fear type. 5, 6s, and 7s are all fear types, and 5s. You might say that they have a fear of being depleted. They have a fear of their time, space, and energy being intruded on. So they develop mental and physical, sometimes geographical, relational boundaries to protect them from being emotionally intruded on and being psychologically intruded on. So 5s can come across sometimes as being distant or detached, emotionally detached. And it's not that they don't have strong emotions, they do. And I think they have strong emotions and they want to keep those protected. And so they're keeping those protected by having good boundaries and staying focused, or focusing their attention on the mental or on the informational aspects of life rather than on the emotional aspects of life. It's like the emotions are too stormy and too, difficult to handle. So we're going to move away from that, and we're going to focus more on the rational or the objective information. So 5s do focus a lot of attention and a lot of energy on information and on data and on gathering data. And it's kind of like they believe that, if you don't have good data and good information, then you just have an opinion. And everybody has opinions. So what's unique about having another opinion? It needs to be based on something more than just, how I feel, on my emotions. It needs to be based on real, actual data, real, actual information. So 5s are going to be very focused on gathering good information. And you might say, information on what? Well, it could be anything. 5s can find interest in just about anything. And once they do, realize that they have sort of a niche for some information, then they'll be very focused on it. And they'll want to get to the bottom of it. They'll want to tinker with it and see how it works and take it apart and disassemble it and reassemble it. And they're going to want to master some niche of information while keeping really their brain open about everything. They're going to be masters of trivial pursuit, trivial information as well. Let's know a little about everything and a lot about something. And if they can find, a niche that provides them with an opportunity to make a difference and to make a living, then 5s are going to find that sweet spot where their passion for learning and their passion for gathering data can also be combined with making a difference and making an impact in the world and making a living in the world. They're innovators by nature. They want to deal with often the edges of knowledge and unravel those edges of knowledge and show you what you thought you knew, and unravel your belief systems, especially the 5-4, the iconoclast, which is a person that destroys belief systems or challenges, let's say it that way, challenges people's belief systems, their faith structures. If a 5, for example, is going to teach a history class. They're going to teach it from the perspective of let me teach you what you didn't know, or let me help you see the false assumptions that exist in history. They're going to want to approach the subject from an innovative standpoint of let's talk about what you thought you knew or what you never knew you didn't know. 7s, like me, are going to often approach a subject with how can we make this fun and enjoyable, but then also how can we motivate and challenge, disrupt, but in the sense of like trying to inspiring people, I think, is big to 7s. Where 5s, it's more about challenging people's assumptions and unraveling their belief systems and giving them now the correct information and, helping them distinguish between false information and correct information and destroying the myths and helping them come to actual facts and challenging people's assumptions with actual facts. I think that's going to be a lot more in the 5 territory. Now you can see where that could be very helpful to a business or to an organization, because you need to deal with real facts. If you're going to build cars or you're going to build combustion engines or whatever it is you're going to make, it's important that you have good raw information and good data, and then you can analyze that information appropriately and then challenge the existing structures in order to create the best products. So 5s are going to be, I think, drawn to that gathering information, assessing information, and then challenging assumptions, and then creating new paradigms based on better information or updated information. So 5s are, like I said, a fear type. They're afraid of being intruded on. Their radar is up. Remember, every type has their radar up for something. The 5's radar is up, looking for who's going to intrude on my boundaries, who or what is going to become intrusive to me. And then they will naturally work to either through information or work through natural boundaries that already exist to create boundaries to protect them from those forces that are going to intrude on them or are going to impede on them or make them feel small. So again, 5s have that sense like the world outside is big and scary. It's rich and exciting and interesting and all that too, but it's deep and frightening, and especially the emotional stuff is deep and frightening. And so there's this sense in which they become like the genius in the box, that's looking through the glass window and analyzing data from the safety and security of this protective shell around them. And 5s can be kind of like they've got a turtle shell around them, They can be kind of cold. They can come across, I don't think they are necessarily cold and distant and detached and all that, but they do come across. You guys do come across often as cold, detached, disinterested, disconnected, not wanting to rely on other people, not wanting to depend on other people. I think it seems kind of frightening for 5s to think that they're depending on other people. What I mean is, like, let's say, go back to that old analogy, like in school you have to do a classroom team assignment. 5s and 8s are going to hate team assignments. 8s think people are stupid and I don't want to depend on them. 5s, I think it feels scary to a 5 to think that my success and my future is dependent on people that are at best just going to intrude on me. 5s, want to believe, and I think do believe, that they can really only rely on themselves. That everybody else, is at best unreliable, at worst intrusive. But there's also, the never ever behavior for a 5 is never underestimate a 5. 5s have this ability to make things happen and to get to the bottom of things. And like, for example, if a 7 tells you that they're working on something, they're going to build a nuclear reactor in their garage, then you could probably laugh it off because it's probably not going to happen. You're going to build a nuclear reactor in your garage. It might be a great idea and it might be a great wish or a dream, but when a 5 tells you they're going to build a nuclear reactor in their garage, never underestimate a 5. They might actually build a nuclear reactor in their garage. Okay, that might be a little of an extreme example, but I think you get the point. Is 5s, you're going to stick with something. They're going to stick with information. They're going to stick with solving and problem solving until maybe they, get to the bottom of things. But as advanced as they are in the world of information, data, and in sort of, you might say, the real world, 5s can sometimes come across and maybe even feel, inept in terms of the emotional world or the social world, social norms. Okay, 5s are probably the least likely to care and be concerned about social norms. I mean, you can meet some pretty harsh 8s, right, who just maybe don't care about social norms, but I think 5s are going to be at the farthest end of that, like beyond 8s even. And what I mean is, like, let's say the niceties of life. Everybody's coming in and saying hello and greeting one another. A 5 comes in, they may feel no responsibility at all to greet anyone, to say hello to anyone. It's like as if their mind is saying, I don't know those people, so why would I say hello to those people? I don't care if I like those people or if those people like me, so why would I care about coming across nice to them or kind to them? That doesn't make any sense. Why would I work to be kind or nice to people that I don't care about, and I don't care if they care about me? And so it's that detachment, you see. It's that detachment, that isolation, that I only need a few people. It's the fear is like all these other people around there are going to pull my energy away. They're going to monopolize my time. They're going to intrude on my time, intrude on my space, and intrude on my energy. And so you keep your distance and isolate yourself from people as a means of protecting. And if you're protecting, then what are you? You're a fear type, okay? You're protecting yourself. It's as if you're afraid that people are going to pull your energy, pull your time, tax your time, energy, and space. And you don't want to deal with all the emotional stuff. It's not that you don't have big emotions. You do. You're right next to the 4, okay? You are right next to the 4. You think first, and then you feel, and then action comes last. So where 4s feel their emotions, and then they think about what they're feeling, okay? If you can see that, feel, think, and act. They feel them first, they think about what they're feeling, and they go in their head to kind of understand what they're feeling. 5s right next to that. They think these deep thoughts, they think these big thoughts, and then the feeling comes next. And the feeling is, I feel safe, because they're a fear type, not a worth type. They're a fear type. So they feel safe because of their deep thoughts. It's as if their thoughts are keeping them safe. If they're focused on the intellect and focused on their thoughts and focused on information, then they can feel something. They can feel secure. They can feel safe. Okay, so thinking, feeling, and then what's the problem? Action. Action often comes last, if it comes at all. 5s always feel like, they don't know enough maybe to finish the assignment and take action. So I shouldn't say they always feel that way. I think that's the challenge right there for 5s, is when it comes to action, is you want to get all of your facts and your data and your information right. So it's kind of like 5s can get stuck in that never wanting to turn the assignment in, because I'm always wanting to revise it. Revise. But it's essentially at some point you have to turn the assignment in. And that's really when 5s move to 8, right? When they challenge. When they take that information that they've got, they take that data, they take that all that's been assessed, that's been the focus of their attention, and they actually, in this sense, kind of like bend down and hand it over. That humble handing it in, that painful, exercise of handing that assignment in. That's when 5s go to 8. They take their information and they challenge the structures. They challenge, imagine, for example, a company is about to, take a step forward, and they're about to take action and move forward for the next 10 years, the 5 is going to take that. This is where they move to 8. They take the information they've been gathering about whatever the company's working on. Maybe they're working on battery cells, or something like that, and there's 2 options they can go with. And the 5 has done all this research, and they've realized, that option A is better than option B. Although everyone's been saying option B is the best option, they've come to recognize through the research that option A is better. So they hand that information over to the CEOs of the company, challenging the whole direction of the company, innovating and challenging the whole direction the company's about to go in. That's when 5s take their information, they step up to the plate, and they take action. Of course, when 5s are unhealthy, they look like 7s, unhealthy 7s, in that maybe they don't have a good focus for their intellectual pursuit, and so they can jump around from one thing to the next, never really landing on anything worthwhile or productive. And in that way, kind of like 7s, who sometimes are gluttons, and just kind of are reaching for things. 5s can kind of lunge in a direction without really it being productive. And so, for example, this 5 who could save the environment by innovating new paradigms of how to process recycling, instead of using their intellect and their skills and their talents in that, they may focus all their attention in becoming, the Dark Lord of how to become the most powerful Dark Lord in Dungeons and Dragons. And they get a lot of enjoyment maybe out of those kinds of role-playing games. Again, role-playing games do what? They allow you to operate in the external world from a safe distance, right? So your role-playing or your video games, that's another big thing that's popular with 5s, is video games. They get into these deep, civilization conquering, conquest video games, because why? It allows them to interact in the world from the safety of their chair, okay, from behind a computer screen. And so this beautiful intellect that could be focused on revitalizing companies or revitalizing structures or innovating and changing and challenging paradigms and all that, is in a 7 way, being sort of misused in lunging at things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I realize leisure can be important, but I think a 5 could take those video games or Dungeons and Dragons role-playing games and that kind of stuff, and they could make it a whole lot more than leisure. They could become engrossed in those things to the point where they're not able to necessarily disassociate themselves from reality and false reality, or to distinguish, I should say, between reality and false reality. They can get lost in their mental state. They can get lost in their mental world, and their imagination, essentially. Okay, so let's talk about some core characteristics of leadership. This is from the 9 Types of Leadership by Beatrice Chestnut. Excellent book, good stuff. Let's see how it provokes our discussion here today. The ability, number 1, to assess and access information skillfully and with interest. Okay, 7s are notorious for this, of wanting to just lunge, of wanting to just, okay, I know enough, let's go forward, let's move. I think 8 could be like that too, a little impulsive, and let's move, let's take action. 1s want a list to take action on. 3s want to take action, okay? 5s can be that, very much that consultant type leader. That consultant who amasses the information and can access the information that says, now wait a minute, before you jump and start taking action, this is what you need to know. This is the lay of the land. This is the real data, the way things really are. I know in your gut, all you gut types, 8, 9s, and 1s, all you gut types, this makes sense to do it in this way. But according to the research and according to the data, if you really care about results, and that way 5s can be like that consultant type leader that is willing to spend their time amassing and assessing and sorting through the information that a lot of people are just going to ignore. And they're going to go with their gut, or they're going to look down and say, well, what's the other company down the street doing? What's the other organization down the street doing? Or what's the other church down the street doing? Let's just copy what they're doing. The 5's going to have a hard time with, let's just do what feels right in our gut. Or let's just do what another organization is doing down the street that seems to be successful. They're going to want to work with real data, real facts, real research, real surveys, real information, and then develop a plan from there. And who can argue with that? Who can argue with that? What a great person to have as either the leader or as the right-hand person to the leader, so that we can go forward with some real information in a real direction. So 5s are good at that, and they enjoy it. They're good at gathering the information, and they enjoy that. Okay? The next thing, number 2, is objectivity. Objectivity. And the point here is, because 5s don't focus on emotions, they can, in a sense, stay somewhat emotionally aloof and focused on the data. They're focused on the information in the data, and so they can kind of leave the emotional side out of things, which can keep them objective. Now, where this really comes into play is like in organizations or in offices, people can get pretty highly charged with their beliefs. Their beliefs, we have a hard time separating ourselves from our beliefs and from our assumptions. And before you know it, the decision to paint the walls green rather than paint the walls blue becomes Marty's plan versus Jennifer's plan. And now it's emotionally charged. It's no longer green versus blue, it's Marty versus Jennifer. And this happens all across the board in companies, in organizations, in churches. It's no longer what makes sense or what's best or what. Nothing is neutral. Nothing is neutral. It's all tied to this person or tied to this person, and people are passionate about their opinions. They're passionate about, and nobody wants to be overlooked, and nobody wants their opinions to be humiliated. And when people get all up in a tither about themselves and whether or not they're being listened to and whether or not they're being valued, and everybody gets emotionally charged, 5s have this beautiful way of getting to the facts and just cutting through all of that relational stuff and all of that emotional stuff to just saying, here's the information, here's what makes sense, here's what we need to do. And they can do it often in just a very few words. They just cut through all the junk and they just get to the heart of things. 9s are very good at bringing harmony and seeing all sides and helping people work through their, to see each other's points of view. But 5s, in just more of a brutal, straightforward, direct way, they cut through the garbage and they just get to the information, and they say research indicates that green has more effective, in creating an environment of trust than blue does. And so the obvious choice is to go with green. And they just cut through all the garbage. They cut through all the emotional stuff and they remain objective. They're able to separate automatically. emotions from thoughts. And so they can be very neutral in assessing, the course or direction of things, and evaluating, communicating, and in communicating the situation, they can be very neutral and very objective, which can be such a relief and such a blessing when things are getting emotionally charged. Number 3, they have a focus on maintaining appropriate boundaries. Okay, where 2s, for example, really struggle with boundaries. 2s, remember, they feel first, and then the 2 is closest to what? The action group. So they are in the feeling group, so they feel first, and then they want to act. So a 2 sees somebody in distress, they feel compassion, or they feel ashamed for not helping them, and so they immediately move to action, and they want to reach out and help, and they want to give, and they want to please, and they want to, and then they think later, was that really what I should have done? Should I have, signed up for all this? Maybe they'll regret it, right? Well, a 5, when it comes to boundaries, where the 2 can get themselves in trouble with boundaries and not having solid boundaries, the 5 is the master at building boundaries. They are going to protect themselves emotionally by building clear boundaries and expectations as to what they will be a part of and what they won't be a part of, what they will give their time and attention and energy to and what they won't. 5s don't have near the problem, because at the end of the day, they don't necessarily need you to like them. They don't necessarily need, much from you. They don't want much from you, and they don't need much from you. Again, they want to believe that they can only depend on themselves. And so out of that assumption and out of that belief, they're not going to rely on you for a lot. And they don't want you to be relying on them for a lot either. They're going to keep that boundary. Some 5s have joked about how they can just awkward people out of a room. Now, that's something to think about, because, other types might be more direct in pushing people out of the room and saying, you got to leave now. 5s not only have the gift of invisibility, 5s can just go invisible when they don't want to, when they're in a crowded room and they don't want to be talked to and they don't want to be acknowledged. They want to just not only blend in, but disappear. Think about that, a 4. Can you imagine a 4 trying to disappear in a crowd? 4s are going to stand out. 3s are going to stand out, right? 5s have the opposite. They have the ability to not, you talk about 4s don't want to blend in. 4s want to fit in, but they don't want to blend in. They want to stand out and be understood and seen how, unique and special they are. 4s, just right next to them, it's so awesome. 4s can not only blend in, but can go camouflage and disappear, right? Put on the invisibility cloak and disappear. And it's a way of maintaining boundaries, is they don't want to be bothered with your junk. They don't want to be bothered with all your stuff, right? And all of your emotional stuff, primarily. So 5s will also respect your space because they want you to respect theirs. Like 6s will be loyal to you because they want you to be loyal back to them. 5s will respect your boundaries because they want you to respect theirs. Okay. Next, intellectual and thoughtful. 5s operate most comfortably on the cognitive or mental level of things and gather information and think deeply about it. 5s are information gatherers. I like to think of them as dump trucks. 1s are dump trucks for getting stuff done. Okay, 1s are like backhoes and dump trucks at getting stuff done. 5s are dump trucks for information. They just gather it. They collect it. They go off by themselves and they just gather it through their phones, through computers, through books, magazines, podcasts, you name it. They're getting information. It's all going in the dump truck. And it's all getting compartmentalized. The way they live their life is compartmentalized. More about that in a minute. But they compartmentalize all this information, and then they just kind of, what's their sin? Stinginess, right? Stinginess, avarice, greed. They hold on to it. It's theirs. And they hold on to this information. And they don't really go around sharing it with everybody. They just kind of maybe look down on everybody like, well, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. But sometimes 5s will, again, when they go to 8, they back up the dump truck at the right time and dump out the right information to save the day. Okay? Like the village hermit, that's out on that's memorizing potions to deal with dragons. And one day when the dragon comes, we're all going to run out to the village hermit to, say the right potion to get rid of it. But sometimes the 5 will back the dump truck up where it's not wanted, and they will dump out all this information to people that don't care. And I'm sure that if you are a 5, there's been times when you've been made to feel like you were annoying people. You were trying to help. 5s, when they share information, that's their way of connecting with you when they share information. If you can understand that, you're married to a 5 or have a child that's a 5, when they start downloading all their information they have about engines and cars, or about, whatever it is they're into, Pokemon cards or Bakugan or whatever it is, when they start sharing with you all the information they know about Star Wars, or, oh, good grief, when it starts, and you get all of that. Well, actually, it's never been proven that anyone has ever lived on planet Tatooine. It's whatever it is. It's they start dumping facts and information on you that you're not ready for, you weren't asking for, and you thought you were going to have a conversation, but really they just want you to see, look how much I know and how safe I'm going to be. See, it's a fear type. How safe I'm going to be because I know all this information. And 5s, when they're unhealthy or when they're operating in unhealth or insecure, they will back the dump truck up at a birthday party and just dump out all this information that no one was asking for. And if you're a 5, you're probably laughing or groaning right now because you know what it's like to think you're helping, to think that you're sharing something of such importance to you that everybody else is just like, nobody cares, Martha. Nobody cares. And then you are just further pushed back into your lair. 5s, I always joke about 5s, they have a secret lair. The mad scientists with the secret lair where they do all their experiments and they learn all their secret information. I love 5s. My son's a 5, so I love 5s. I've got a lot of friends that are 5s. And I think about Sheldon on Big Bang Theory. Okay. All right. And also, what's the guy on Parks and Rec? I forget his name. You guys know who I'm talking about. The one with the mustache. Ron. Yeah, Ron. He's a 5. Okay. And Dwight Schrute. Okay. Intellectual and thoughtful. Detached from emotions. Objective thinkers. Okay. Sometimes that means that 5s can look like they lack empathy. And I think they can. They lack empathy and lack sympathy for people. And again, back to social norms of treating people, it's going to be hard for 5 leaders, you're going to have to, if you're going to be a leader in an organization or with people, you're going to have to get interested in people. And if you're watching a video in the Enneagram, that's a good sign that you're moving in the right direction, because at the end of the day, I mean, you have to be friendly with people. You have to be considerate. Maybe try reading the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. What a great book. How to Win Friends and Influence People by I've got it up there on my shelf, but I can't see the author. You can look it up. It's been around for 100 years. An excellent book about, if you really want to deal with real information, then part of that information is the people, is the emotional information is information, right? And people, study people. Make that something that's on your niche list of things to learn, is how people act and what people expect and how to present yourself. Because I know some 5s that are so backwards in terms of relating to people. I mean, they'll pick up their phone, they got their phone and they're sitting there like this, and you try and talk to them. You say, so, hey, Frank, I heard you're done with school. Yep. They never look up. There's no thought in their mind that they should be engaged in small talk at all. Why? What's the purpose? There's no point to it. They're not gathering information. I'm not sharing any information, so this doesn't concern me. And you're trying to have some kind of a conversation with Frank. You're like, so you're done with school and you're looking for a job right now. What are you looking for? I don't know. They won't even look up. They just look down at their phone. I don't know. And again, it's that awkwarding you out of their space. They're awkwarding, and whether that's intentional or not, they're awkwarding you out of that space. So the gift of invisibility and the gift of awkwarding people. Okay, that's great, if you got to use that against your competition, but don't use that, be conscious of people around you and the connections they're trying to make. And even though you may not value those for an emotional reason, maybe you can start to value those because it can make you more productive or more useful. And studying people could make you more productive and a better leader. Okay, or you may lose your job simply because of the way you come across. If you don't come across nice and kind and friendly, and that you care, there's an old saying, right? People don't care what you know until they know that you care. Okay? So people don't, and that could work for the place that you're employed at too. You could lose your job because you could come across with such horrible bedside manners. You're just dealing with facts, right? And so, I'm sorry, you're dying of cancer. But you got to be careful and cautious in the way you talk to people. People are not just facts and robots and information. People are hearts and souls and spirits and emotions. And so you got to take that into consideration in the way you interact with people. Is you've got to care and be concerned about the whole person, okay? All right, so a detachment from emotions, objective thinkers, private and modest. 5s do what they do without wanting to get a lot of attention for the things that they do. And that's great because, 3s could learn a lot from you on that regard. Is you don't necessarily need to, they're handing out plaques and trophies. You probably don't even want to go to that meeting where that banquet, that office banquet, that office picnic. You probably don't even want to be there, much less go up and receive the plaque and, oh, thank you. I want to thank everybody. 5s probably are not interested in any of that. And so that's something, that's something I can respect, is that you're willing to do what you're doing without getting a lot of recognition for it. Now, you may have other ways that you have your recognition, your diplomas, your degrees, your titles, and so you don't necessarily need everybody's pat on the back and that they're attaboy and boy, you really, stand out. And 5s often are naturally shy and introverted, and they tend to be uncomfortable in the spotlight and like to work from the background or like to work from the lair, from their laboratory, Okay, last thing, tendency to compartmentalize. So everything's in a file folder for 5s. They like to exercise a sense of control of what they know and what people know about them. And so things do get compartmentalized in the way 5s live. I'd be interested in talking to some 5s and finding out more about that and how that relates to life. You got your family life and your work life and your church life and your community life and your the whatever organizations that you probably don't belong to if you're a 5. But you've got all these different compartments, and also the way you compartmentalize information and knowledge, like file folders that are in your head, and file folders like and it may come somewhat out of I don't want the information in those different groups shared between each other, because I have to relate with this group in this way and I relate with this group in that way. And it keeps everything nice and tidy and neat and separate. By the way, 5s, something else about 5s. 5s tend to be the least hygienic. So if you brushed your teeth today and took a shower, hey, we want to applaud you as a 5. And I think it's because this sort of that absent-minded professor, 5s aren't necessarily looking in the mirror every day with, well, how do I look and how am I coming across, and are people gonna, admire me? And so I think fives, can take a shower and then put on the same clothes they were wearing before with the barbecue stains on them, and it's no big deal. That's not important. That's not what their focus is. Their focus isn't on the social norms and on being pleasing to people, and I think they can get lost in their basement of research or their basement of video games and kind of neglect the sometimes the obvious things in life that need to be taken care of. So thank you guys for joining me for this video. I hope you had fun. I did. If you've got a 5 in your life, go find them and hug them. Hug them. Reach out for them and hug them. I'm sure that they will appreciate it. All right, guys. Be present to life. I'll see you next time.